Who knows? All right.
I love it. We're synced up. I'm glad I did my hair today.
Yeah.
I'm glad I did it. I didn't even know we were gonna go video.
I did wash my hair today, so
that's good. You look great.
Well, thanks.
You look great.
I'm fine. Well, then let's get it started and just like talk and like get ourselves introduced. I think that would be a good place to start.
Yeah, we should do introductions. We should do introductions.
I don't know if I'm like addressing the camera at all. I'll probably leave.
I think this is just like
it's
we're
just
just
you
chilling.
And me.
We just chill like with microphones.
Yeah.
Because we always say such brilliant shit.
Can you chill with microphones though?
We're gonna find out.
We're gonna find out. I'm never chill when the microphone's in front of me. I'm always wary.
Well, then I'll be chilling.
I might get canceled for something I say.
Yeah,
I'm prime target for that.
That's right. Everyone's out to
get me.
Everyone's coming for you, brother.
It's the paranoia of our time.
Pew pew pew.
I guess so. Yeah, Mr. Ben Thelen. I'm Kyle Bruehl. Ben Thelen is a host of Dead Reckoner podcast. I am a host of I Know Movies and You Don't, the most pretentious podcast title I think on the internet.
I mean, there's so many podcasts.
There's so many. You gotta out pretension everybody. That's usually the idea. But you asked me to kind of do an up-to-date movie review podcast.
So if this goes badly, it's my fault.
Yes, I need that up front.
No, I like talking movies with you. I think that it's fun to talk about. I like what we do on I Know Movies and You Don't, because we talk about old movies.
Yeah.
Not always old, but, movies that we know, movies that we already know are good.
They've definitely have time to mature in our consciousness, the pop culture consciousness, all of that. There is a relatively set opinion on a lot of these movies.
Yes, and you can go against that, or you can say something that everyone else thinks is good sucks, which can be interesting or boring.
Happens, yeah.
Well, but I mean, you can be that guy or whatever. It's fine, right? Yeah. But I think it's interesting to talk about new movies for all kinds of reasons, right?
Absolutely.
Because we see them, because we like them, because we care about and think about kind of cinema as an art form, right? In its whatever stage it's in right now. And there is no settled opinion about these things, right? I mean, you can look at a Rotten Tomatoes score, a Metacritic score, and that gives you some sort of a slice of, I guess I feel like those things tell you whether something is like okay, right? Like whether it's like whether people think it's generally trash or not.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, if you see a Rotten Tomato score that's in the relatively positive, I think they're saying if you're interested, it's sort of worth spending your money on.
Well, it's just a thumbs up, thumbs down. Right? Yeah, it's like if you're. I mean, I understand the role that aggregators play, right? It's like I want to see a movie. I'm not sure which movie I want to see. So let's see the one with a good score, or let's see which ones have a good score and pick from those. Yeah. I get it. It's just, I guess it's interesting to talk about contemporary movies that are being made today, the things that we're all going to the theaters to watch, and things that people don't have a settled opinion about. We're going to talk about movies from directors today that both directors I like. Right.
Absolutely. No, they're fantastic.
I think it's interesting to chew on these things when the takes maybe haven't been so fully formed.
Yeah.
So we'll see if that's true.
Yeah, this will be an interesting conversation, I think, for both movies, because I am not fully sold on either for each of the filmmakers. I think I enjoy one more than the other. I think you could probably tell which one I do. Just based off of my preferences alone, I think most people, if they know me, although you might be watching this for the first time, you might be getting my personality for the first time. You have no idea.
Kyle's a total fucking lunatic.
Yeah, there's arguments to be made, but today we're talking about Denis Villeneuve's adaptation of Frank Herbert's Dune.
That's right.
Or half of Dune, I should say. Part one.
Dune part one.
Dune part one.
Part two may or may not come into being.
It's not. It's in pre-production. It's not even being filmed. So you might not get it.
I didn't even. This is so funny. I didn't even know till last week. I thought they just filmed them both.
I
Lord
thought
of the
that
Rings
too.
Style.
I had heard it was going to be two parts, but then everyone was saying, "Oh no, it's Dune. Dune's coming out this October, or it was supposed to come out last December, or whatever. I don't know.
Well,
It got
spoiler alert.
switched.
This is a general spoiler alert because we will spoil these movies for you because we're going to talk ad nauseum. But it does say Dune Part 1. It is styled
Right in the beginning. Right in the
It is
beginning.
styled as Dune Part 1. So unless he's trying to... it would be funny and sort of ironic. It's like History of the World Part 2.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's coming. History of the World Part 2 is coming.
Yeah.
Even though it was a joke at the time. It wasn't intended to happen. But so we are talking about the newest adaptation, the second only adaptation. I forget if there was a TV movie version.
There was a sci-fi TV miniseries that I have a vague recollection of.
Yeah.
I did watch it. I'm sort of a Dune head.
Oh,
so.
really? Well, I'm excited to get into that then with you.
It's probably one of the first like real books, like big adult books that I read.
That is an adult book.
And I loved science fiction growing up. I mean, I was a big fan of all the Stars, Trek, and Wars. And this book was definitely one of the first like serious books. And it is a serious book in the vein of a certain kind of serious science fiction where it's got glossaries and appendices and maps and all the shit that came to characterize a certain kind of science fiction.
The density of Frank Herbert's book is like a black hole. Like, it is so...
I have to go back and read it. That's one thing that seeing this movie made me think about is... I haven't read it for a while. I've read it multiple times, but it's been, I don't know, at least a decade, probably more.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm excited to revisit reading it. So Kyle, drum roll, please.
Oh.
Is this the one you liked of the two today?
Well, I should be clear. I liked both movies generally.
Let me be clear.
Let me be clear. I just need, I need, no politics. Don't come after me. I liked both movies generally. I liked French Dispatch more. That's more up my alley.
Second movie.
Yeah, French Dispatch. It's going to be in the title of this. It's going to be there. It's going to say review Dune and French Dispatch.
Question marks. Yeah. Okay. So what about this were you not sold on?
Oh, okay. Well, that's a hefty conversation because what I was sold on, because I think Villeneuve as a technical master of the craft, which he is.
Yes, no doubt, a good, someone who knows how to direct a film.
Yeah,
right?
He has done thrillers. He has done existential dramas. I love Enemy. I do love Prisoners. Even going back to his Quebecois years, like I have enjoyed most of what he has done to a wide degree, a wide spectrum of appreciation, but it's always usually on the positive. I love Arrival. I like Arrival more than like Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah, those are the last two, right?
Yeah.
I would say his last three movies, those two plus Sicario, are sort of his the most well known of his oeuvre.
Yeah, of his filmography for those that oeuvre.
Well, you
say
his name with such a lovely French pronunciation.
Denis Villeneuve, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not going to put you on the spot right now. I'll give you my top level take. I really liked this movie.
Okay,
I was surprised by how much I liked this movie.
It's not a bad movie.
I think it's great. I think it's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to be the more enthusiastic of the
If anybody came about it saying it's a bad movie, I would be a bit skeptical.
So what does Villeneuve give us, right? Well, he's a real filmmaker, and this is a real film, right? Mm-hmm. We've talked before about Scorsese and how he got roasted for saying that we should come up with a new category for Marvel movies, audiovisual entertainment. The truth is we already have the category for what like a lot of big budget like franchise movies are. They're television, right? They're television. Mm-hmm. They're created by someone who is not the director, right? They're created by, they're the vision of someone, whatever his name is, Kevin Feige, right?
Yeah.
Kathleen Kennedy. These executives who sort of create an overarching vision that gets executed over multiple films, the way a showrunner would control the flow of a television show, even though the individual episodes would be directed by whatever people, hired guns, right? Villeneuve is not that, and this is not that. This is a Denis Villeneuve movie. Right?
Absolutely.
It passes that first test of what I would call real cinema. I mean, you talk about being a snob. This sounds so fucking snobby, but it is a real it is a movie made by a human, written by a human. Like
couple of humans, Eric
but,
Roth.
yeah, but
and
no, but
Villeneuve,
no, I
yeah.
understand.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's clearly has an artistic vision.
Yes.
That is sui generis to itself, right?
Yes.
That is not part of some, like a 20 movie cycle of Dune movies that kind of all seem the same, even though they're made by different
This
people.
is a different type of approach. This is a modernized approach to what a lot of filmmakers of this ilk and of this style, of this kind of monolithic scale of filmmaking were doing in the 60s, like David Lean was doing with Dr. Zhivago or Lawrence of Arabia.
Yes.
This is visually impressive, worldly involving, because it is such a complex universe. Frank Herbert, anyone who's not necessarily aware of the book are aware of its iterations because it's such an impactful piece of science fiction literature. George Lucas has famously built upon the foundation of Frank Herbert's Dune to do Star Wars.
You can sense right away that Dune is at the. You never say it's. There's always a story that comes before the story that you're talking about, right? But it is definitely near the beginning of the river, right?
Yeah.
And not just with Star Wars, which was the obvious comparison, right? I mean, the plot of the first Game of Thrones book is basically cribbed from the first half of Dune.
Yeah, and like the house, Stark house.
Yes, all the houses.
All of these houses, like you can really see that in this movie. The Harkonnens, the Atreides, like all of these interplanetary geopolitical forces that are intertwining and have their own breathing life.
Yes.
It's so fascinating to get engrossed in that world and just what I would say is a purely atmospheric and visual experience where I did not necessarily fully engross myself is in the characters. There is a distance, a detachment in Villeneuve's style that I felt existed in Blade Runner 2049 that is, I think, exacerbated here.
See, that's interesting. I think this movie does one of the reasons I liked this movie more was that I thought it did a better job at making the characters seem real and having a certain warmth and depth to them than Blade Runner did. So that's, I guess,
some more than others.
But sometimes, this is interesting, right? Because sometimes you get sucker from like very strange sources. To me, the character and the actor that really brings this movie together is Jason Momoa.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, okay.
He is definitely the sort of emotional beating heart of this movie, right? And I like Momoa a lot. I'm a big fan of his. I like
As somebody who met him and escorted him in the ArcLight cinemas back in the day, I did a Q&A with him. He is one of the most genuine people you'll ever meet, and he is just he cannot fake the life that's in him. He's brimming with life. Like he brings that to his characters.
Absolutely, because my issue with Arrival and with Blade Runner is that yes, there's this distance between the characters that make them. I mean, it seems as if Villeneuve purposely sometimes wants them to have a kind of a flat or distant affect, right? That they're sort of they seem very serious, kind
brooding.
of self-serious, brooding. But here you get these characters, right, that cut through that and to me gave the characters kind of levels. Because some of them were distant and brooding, which I think made sense for the character. But it wasn't that. I feel in some of those other movies that they're all kind of that way. And Momoa in particular, as Duncan Idaho, to me just brings this sort of energy and life to the movie that shot through it. And other people do that too. I mean, it's a murderer's row of actors, right? There's not a single person in this movie that is not like. I like Chalamet too. I mean, I thought that he
works better in this movie than he does in French Dispatch.
Okay,
I will say that.
Yeah, we can talk about.
Yeah,
that.
we will talk about that.
I 100% agree with you. But he has a couple like. To me, there's the famous scene where he's forced to put his hand in the box and sort of be tortured by the Bene Gesserit. That to me was the best execution of that scene I've ever seen done, and it was all him. I mean, it was he really sort of played that role, like the way he kind of goes on the journey from the pain and the anger and the anguish, the kind of the acceptance and kind of issuing the challenge to the witch who's torturing him, basically saying like, I can deal with this. You think I can't handle this? Right? That was all his performance.
Yes,
that was all his performance. And I was like, I saw that and I was like, you did that. Like he did that scene and he brought it off.
Yes. I do think he is rather impressive, even though I think because of the I guess what would be the right word for it, the mountain to climb that this narrative is, and that you're only getting essentially half a completion of an arc, that we will see the basis and the foundation of this performance, I think, grow. Hopefully we get the second part, just for the mere sake of completion, that we will see it grow and we will see it flourish and bloom from the foundation that he's given this child who is brought up and given powers essentially through blood intertwining. Like he's kind of an amalgamation of different entities and people that he takes on. He doesn't necessarily understand himself. He doesn't understand his powers. And Chalamet does a really, really good job in that kind of existential, problematic relationship he has with himself, and I think his performance exudes that in quite a fulfillment.
And it helps us get at what is interesting and enduring about Dune, right? Which is that this is a story that is very ambivalent about the role of heroes, like Paul Atreides, aka Muad'Dib. I mean, they call him the Mahdi, right? Which I think is a Villeneuve change. I don't think that's used in the book, right?
I don't think so.
And it's a direct reference to Islamic tradition, right? Which the Fremen and the ideas in it are clearly sort of cribbed from to one extent or the other. But it's very interesting to me that they start to, yes, I agree, it all has to get paid off in a second movie. Like, there's no question, right? But we do see him start to both embrace the role, right? There's that great scene with Aliette Kynes' character where he starts to sort of, he's basically playing on the fact that some people think he's a messiah to survive, right? He knows that he has to kind of, he needs some help.
Whether he believes it or not.
Yes, whether he believes it or not. Yeah. And you can even hear his mother say, careful, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, and that's a great moment because it's like, careful of what? Right? Careful of making them believe it, careful of believing it yourself, right? And then we get the scene later in the tent where he sort of starts to freak out, talking about visions of these sort of messianic wars that he's going to set off, right? It's a story that is very ambivalent about heroes, which puts it ahead of pretty much all the sort of big budget cinema that we get, about which there is no ambivalence about the importance of superheroes, right?
We live in an age where we're dependent on the idea that there are.
Well, we're dependent on it, or at least it seems like a good thing,
yeah.
right?
That's a good way of putting it.
Superman or Captain America or even Batman, right? Who's like supposed to be ambiguous but really isn't ultimately. Like that would be good. Wouldn't it be nice, to quote the Beach Boys, right? And this is a story that's very ambivalent about how nice it would be, right? It's very skeptical of, you know what I mean? Frank Herbert's a product of the middle of the 20th century, right? Everybody knows what happened when people got swept up by big ideas in the middle of the 20th century, right? Well, that's on the mind of any serious person.
Well,
right?
And you have to give, I think, Villeneuve credit for on the production and costume design. Especially with Atreides or the Harkonnen, there is fascist symbolism to a lot of these ideas that you're talking about. This idea about in history, when we get swept up in the ideas of heroes, we get swept on the idea of people will change for the better. It has an eerie sensibility in the use of production. I mean, this movie is like Lawrence of Arabia meets Triumph of the Will to a large degree.
Yeah. No, there's definitely some of that. And it's funny because you bring up Lucas, right? And people always think about, Star Wars, Tatooine, the desert planet, and this sort of messianic story. But in a lot of ways, Dune is what he kind of tried to do and failed to do in the prequel trilogy, right? With this kind of intrigue and the sense of ambiguity, right?
Yeah.
Think about this sort of convoluted plot of episode 1, where you've got all these different people who are kind of fighting, but maybe not fighting, maybe working together.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Yeah, definitely the trade organization
Yes.
is very much another callback to Frank Herbert's universe that he is paying homage to in a large degree.
Yes. But I mean, like I said, so the fingerprints of this story are everywhere.
Yes.
It has a sort of scope and ambition. Well, so this is interesting. Like I'm in a poor position to know. I wonder whether even this movie, right, inspired some of the same confusion that the Lynch one did, with people being like, I don't, who's this? What's that? I thought he did a pretty good job of like setting up and doling out the information that needed to be doled out to make the story coherent.
It's very different. I mean, this version, this half of the movie, half of the plot line, half of the world building and setting the foundation is done in 2.5 hours, and David Lynch did most of the work and then had to complete it within 2.
Yes,
so
I mean, he has all the time in the world, but I mean, I guess, like I said, I really like this movie. Like I wasn't, I saw it and I knew that I had to sleep and wake up and think about it, and when I woke up, I was like, yeah, that was good. And I don't know what that means, right? As someone who loves the source material, I feel like that's maybe a good sign for this movie.
Certainly,
that I enjoyed it, but I mean, it really was Momoa and even.
Well, he's literally the only character with a sense of humor. So
Well,
I mean,
no. I mean, I wish we'd gotten more of Harvey Bardem, but that character,
he does have he's dry. That's
It's
very
also,
true.
I mean, that Stilgar character is a great character.
Yeah, Stilgar. Yeah,
but and we'll see more of him if they make the part 2, inshallah.
we'll see more of Josh Brolin if they follow the book. And
Brolin, who brings he brings a. Well, not quite humor, but certainly something kind of salty. And I mean, what I'm saying is, I feel like these characters. I feel like there was more texture to these characters. I felt like
than say like the Lynch
Arrival
version
or Blade Runner. I just thought
Villeneuve.
that those characters, they were just kind of there, right? Oh, Batista, I thought was really good too.
I was not completely sold.
I really liked Batista. It's funny because I think that opening scene in Blade Runner with Batista is one of the best. Parts of the movie.
And maybe
he
that's
brings such pathos to that.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's
character.
my hesitation on this one, because he kind of goes into a villainous Drax, like where he's yelling at Stellan Skarsgård's Vladimir.
Actually, I like Skarsgård a lot.
He's fantastic.
As the Baron Harkonnen. Which is not like an easy role to play. I think. Like,
not at all.
How do you bring humanity to this? I mean, this just man slug.
He's a man slug.
This floating man slug.
He literally is a floating Jabba the Hutt, in a large degree.
I did think it was funny how directly an homage to Apocalypse Now he does when he has Skarsgård just come out of the muck.
Yeah,
right. I was
fantastic.
Like, that's a real. I mean, it's why not? I mean, to me, it's one of the most iconic cinematic images, sort of seared into my brain, as Martin Sheen kind of climbing out of the muck,
the mud. For his.
So if you're gonna steal from the best.
Absolutely, and Villeneuve knows how to do it subtly, where it's not as profound.
I don't have a problem with homage. I mean, the movie.
The
movie is very original, right? It has a lot of his. Like I said, you feel his fingerprints on it.
Yeah.
You would not mistake. I mean, that's one thing that these two movies are going to have in common. Is that they're movies that are very much bear the mark of their directors.
Of their filmmakers, yeah.
Right.
Villeneuve definitely, I mean, this one visually obviously takes this is shot by Greg Fraser. Blade Runner 2049, shot by Roger Deakins, wins an Academy Award for it. They're different templates for how do you tell a futuristic story, but the tone is similar. And that's why you can tell that it's a Villeneuve film, that it really is through the lens of how he is methodically telling his stories.
You know how you can tell that I like this movie? Maybe I can't be objective. Maybe I just want to feel good about a movie since, Star Wars has done me no such favors.
Sure.
I even kind of like the Hans Zimmer score.
No, I love it.
And I am not a Hans Zimmer fan.
No, I'm not either. I
feel like it's so much bombast from him. And I mean, I saw it in Dolby. Did you see it in Dolby?
I did. Yes, I did.
So loud. I mean, I love it. Like, I love it. It's a it's just very loud, very technically kind of intense. But he did like let it breathe and do some interesting kind of textures that, for me, Zimmer is just like, it's just sometimes it's just so, it's like a poor man's bombastic Philip Glass, right? Where it's just like these textures are just so loud and so powerful and just hitting you in the fucking jaw. And I even this one, I thought he showed some new tricks.
Yeah,
which I was,
and it is loud. It is prominent,
but he does give it some quiet moments.
Yeah.
And they're like the whispering and these little things. Like I liked it. I thought it worked even that worked for me.
Yes,
but maybe that's just a sign that I'm just fucking in the bag for Villeneuve and for this movie.
Well, and maybe I need to also come out and say maybe I have a bias towards bagpipes because I love how he used them.
God, the bagpipes, the bagpipes. I mean, that whole sequence of them arriving at the planet that
is cinema. Like,
I mean, the dress whipping and it's all very. Apparently, our mutual friend Thelen was telling me that's the most expensive costume ever. Like it's made of like gold or something. Like that dress that she wears.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I was like, oh, cool. I mean, it's a nice dress.
Well, we haven't gotten into like. I mean, obviously, people, if you're listening, you're just interested in get people's reactions about this film, and two people who have moderate, familiarity with film to have the conversation, to have.
I think you've done like 7,000 movie podcasts.
I mean, not that.
Who knows more about
many.
movies than you? You know movies and nobody, and we don't.
No, that's not the point of the show. You need to listen to it again. No, but we haven't gotten like into like the details of this film, the kind of plot by plot details. I mean, we've scattered here and there, but I don't know how much you want to root people in our conversation.
Well, I mean, what do we think is useful to know, right?
Yeah.
I think. I mean, I don't think we need to go through like what happens in the movie necessarily. I mean, I think it's interesting to think about kind of what our impression was, or sort of where.
Sure.
Where we kind of felt like we were on or not on. So for you, it sounds to me like it's just like some of the characters you think just. I mean, so, is it sort of what that kind of what I was trying to communicate about something like Blade Runner, which to me is like that movie is like a technical tour de force. Like I would say, like shot for shot, that movie is a time capsule level movie.
Yeah.
As a piece of storytelling, it's kind of. I don't know that I love it.
No.
Well, in fact, I know that I don't love it.
Yeah. No, I would say the same.
I mean, it's maybe the best cinematography from contemporary, the best cinematographer, right? Some of his best work.
Some of his best work. And it's interesting because I don't know. I'd have to go back and look at that year. Who was up in the category? Obviously, I think everyone just agreed that he deserved the Oscar. Like,
yeah, it was
and it was his first, so we have to consider that.
Achievement,
yeah.
But I really remember seeing it in the theater, feeling like
it's exquisite,
it's just perfect.
Yeah.
Like just every shot, I was like, perfect.
Yeah.
Like just almost to the point that I thought it was kind of. It was just almost like he was showing off. He was so good, right?
It does feel like but he doesn't have that attitude. He
seems like a very sweet guy.
Yeah,
have you ever listened to him? He's got a good podcast.
He and his wife do a podcast.
Plug for
we should plug their podcast. It's very worthwhile.
Shout out to Roger Deakins. Come on the pod. So,
I wonder if he would. I don't know.
I mean, you never know. He might show up at the door right now.
It's unknown.
It's groovy, man.
It's groovy. Let's just sit down. Let's do this. Well, I need to. So, experientially, I was enthralled visually, engrossed in the world building. I was fascinated in that ability to distill this book, which again, I mean, he actually does a very economical pass on the book. I mean, he gets you rooted in a lot of these different cultures and the geopolitical stakes that are happening. But he also kind of quick cuts and almost does the essential scenes of necessary to understanding this story. So again, the book, if you're doing an adaptation, this is an interesting study on adaptation because can you really get into all the minutia and details of Frank Herbert's book? I don't think so.
Well, structurally, I think what he does is smart in one sense, right? Which is that he gets to the sort of the kind of turning point where basically, you know, the Atreides are betrayed because we know it's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's you know, they're going to be betrayed. They know they're going to be betrayed, and he gets to that quickly and gets them into the desert.
Yeah,
which is where it becomes, which is where it starts.
It's like a survival tale at that point.
It starts to be able to counter kind of the thing you know, you may still have had some experience with, which was a sense of distance, a sense of too big a scale, right? I mean, to me, something like the Lord of the Rings movies, particularly, I really like the first one, are kind of the movies that do some of the best job of like going from grand sweep to like intimate character. Mm-hmm. This movie maybe is not as good at that, right? Which is sort of that movie's great strength. But it does have some of that, where you get this epic kind of visual and this epic sense of an epic historical story. Not, you know what I mean? Like a world-changing events are happening,
yes.
right? Great powers are duking it out over epic, important things. And then the very personal parts of the story, right? Which, like I said, I mean, that's all very impressionistic to say how well he did that. Yeah. I thought he did a pretty good job. And part of the way that I think he did that is by getting them out into the desert, right? Which is where it becomes more personal story.
Yeah. And I agree with you. There is just something about Villeneuve's tone. And you could even say it for the conceptual nature of his cinema. He is very conceptual. He is very in his head about the experience and about the technicalities of filmmaking.
I mean, even the visual, right? I mean, he really does love things that are visually impressive but also spare, right? Mm. You can tell that he is influenced by contemporary art, right? Because you get almost like Rothko-esque, like blocks of color, blocks of things, and then an accent, right? He likes to create a really, and that was another part of my problem with Arrival, is that it was so desaturated that it seemed kind of like I was watching the movie with like Vaseline on the lens almost. You know what I'm saying? Like it was just so gray, right? Whereas this, it's more colorful, right? And but he does love like a big sort of block of something, like a dark, like a block of dark with something cool looking, and then a block. You know, he likes to deploy negative space.
Which the desert sand landscapes serve so well for that style, because he can punctuate in the nothingness, in the void of this planet. He can punctuate it with an image, and so it works to his advantage. But what I was going to get at is there are just some moments in the film, especially with the urgency or the intimacy or the care that I need to have for the survival of Paul in particular. While I think Timothée Chalamet brings more of a connection and grounded, brooding, a little, you know, he seems like the emo child to a lot of teenage years to a large degree, but he grounds it better than, say, like Kyle MacLachlan and as much as David Lynch's version.
As much as I think the Lynch, I mean, that's a whole other story. I think
it is true. That is a whole different conversation.
I think there's a lot to like about it, but I agree with you that sort of McLaughlin's kind of eager beaver, like there's a reason McLaughlin's greatest character is Dale Cooper, right? Because he's got that kind of eager, like kind of, I thought that this is certainly closer to the way that I would envision Paul Atreides being.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
A lot of ambivalence about kind of where he finds himself.
Yes.
And why wouldn't he feel ambivalent, right?
Everything's so...
it's fucked up, right?
Yeah, everything's fucked up, or it's so large and so
You want to survive, go tell these people you're Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? That's really it. Go tell them you're the Messiah.
Yeah.
And you'll get to live.
So and with that consideration, it's like this world, and maybe it's I'm in Paul's shoes, and maybe I need to come around to that.
I've often thought you were the Messiah.
Maybe I'm the Messiah. No, maybe my ambivalence, my lack of caring, is because of the monolithic scale, in the epic nature of this story, for me, in a digestible one watch, seems so large that perhaps the answer is to engage in it more, engage in it in other ways, rewatch it, and perhaps my care and appreciation for that feeling, one that I feel as a detachment and disconnect for the story in general. I don't want to say Villeneuve is an emotionless filmmaker, but there is something, because he's not the technocrat and the emotionless chess piece filmmaker that Christopher Nolan is. He does have a general sense of the importance of people in large stories, the importance of people in their own stories. So I do think that he is tapping into something, and perhaps I didn't click with it in the first watch. I was mesmerized by its largesse, but I did feel a little disconnected in this kind of emotional center, this emotional core, where I can compare it, and maybe it's unfair to compare it to, say, Luke Skywalker's position in Star Wars. I emotionally connected to that very quickly.
Want to go to the Tashi station, pick up some power.
Yeah, he's a little bit whiny. It's
very different. Right?
Yeah, you're right. It is very different.
I honestly think that the original Star Wars to Dune comparisons are a little overwrought for that reason.
Absolutely.
I feel like they're very different kinds of stories, right? Because, I mean, Star Wars is a story without ideology, right? Mm-hmm. You have no idea what the rebels are for, what the Empire is for. It's never,
all symbolic.
It's never gotten into, right?
I mean, you can come from different political versions and apply it to your bias.
That's
the Empire. That's the rebels.
That's why it's the ultimate sort of like everyone can co-opt it, right? Yes. Everyone can co-opt the imagery of Star Wars, right? Whereas, like, when fascists, and they have, right, try to co-opt the Dune ideas, it's clear that they're getting it wrong, right? Like, this is a movie that's about the corrupting forces of power, and the quote-unquote heroes, the quote-unquote good guys, and this is the other thing that Martin in Game of Thrones completely steals from this, the good guys aren't even that good. The good guys are to be good. Like, think about the scene between Leto and Paul, right, in the graveyard, where it's like, you got to come to this in your own way. I didn't want to do it either, right? I wanted to be a pilot, right? That's a funny little parallel to Star Wars I never thought about before. I wanted to be a pilot, but I got there my own way. It's like, greatness means, like, accepting that people have to be ruled and you're the one to do it, right? That's not Star Wars. No. And it's also not something that the movie treats as the movie is examining that notion. The story, and the movie to some extent, is examining that notion. It's not accepting that notion uncritically, right? Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of ambiguity, and so I think an ambiguous and ambivalent response is a normal response to that. Yeah. I think it's, but I also, like I said, I think it's what, and honestly, like, it manages to get there in a way that I think is, and I keep coming back to Game of Thrones because I think it's the closest analogy in, like, mass culture. It gets there in a way that I think is more interesting than the way Game of Thrones is. Because Game of Thrones ultimately just descends into insane barbarism. Yeah. Right? That's the move, right, that Martin makes, is just to have everyone just become tremendously barbaric. And there's a lot of barbarism in this movie. I always think it's so funny that these movies have to all be PG-13, because it's like, there's just tremendous carnage in this movie. There is. But of course, the whole concept is genocide. You don't see someone get decapitated, but yeah, there's a bunch of violence, right? Just insane violence.
And quickly too, I do have to say, on the stakes of the story, Villeneuve does set it like, he sets up the players in motion and then quickly eliminates characters that you wouldn't, in any other franchise, in any other, there is a boldness there. Another Game of Thrones move. Yeah, right? Another Game of Thrones move that you would eliminate the Duke Leto. His dad. Duke Leto. Oscar Isaac, who does a great job. He does a great job in orienting you in the pragmatic nature of leadership. And that he just so happens to be on the what you would consider the Ned Stark goodness, the Ned Stark pragmatism.
But the best you can hope for in that world, right, is this kind of some sense of noblesse oblige, right? Which, is not that great. Yeah. And if that morphs into someone going on a messianic crusade, right, well, then, then what do we do?
Yeah.
Right? Then how do we feel about it?
Yeah. Then it's a little different.
I was thinking about all the things about it that are weird. You know why they fight with knives? I wonder if people are sitting there thinking, why are these motherfuckers fighting with knives? Do you know the answer to that?
I do not know.
So this is deep cuts from the book. You have to those personal shields that they all wear.
Yeah.
Basically rendered projectile weapons. Totally worthless. Like,
interesting.
They'll block anything that's moving really fast. So even if you swing a sword or shoot someone, it's blocked by the shield.
That is fascinating.
So the only way to kill someone is with like a certain very subtle knife movements that can cut through those energies.
It's interesting.
It's interesting. I always think it's funny, like how people perceive those details.
It is fascinating how detailed this world is, and yet, am I impressed by Villeneuve to not explain the mythology and like the current, because I think that is I think I am impressed with that move, because I feel like we do have over-explanatory movies these days, and so
I think he bleeds it in well. I mean, I didn't find myself. I knew all this shit, and I didn't find myself sort of yawning like, okay, we get it, like blah 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 blah. So I mean, we'd really have to talk to someone who's like tabula rasa to the whole story to know if this shit kind of makes sense or makes enough sense to work, right? That's really the only issue there.
Yeah.
I felt like it did, but like I said, I can't really evaluate that. I'm not the person to answer that question. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like we got most of the meat off the bone on that.
Yeah. I should just clarify. It's like, this is not a bad movie, and I did not lack enjoyment.
Denis, we still love you, man. Come on the pod. Denis.
That would be a blessing. It really would. But no, I
love you.
What it
Kyle
is
still loves you.
Absolutely. No, I'm appreciative of this kind of filmmaker with a very confident approach and mature approach to cinema, where he believes, and I know he has spoken out against watching movies on your phone. He's spoken out about watching movies.
Him and Lynch can get together on that.
Yeah,
It's a fucking nightmare.
It's a nightmare. He has such a maturity that I cannot take that away from this experience. When you watch it, you're like, this took such confidence to approach the material. It takes a very delicate approach to immerse people who are aware and yet unaware, and to do that balancing act in the most meticulous form, and he really does orient you quite confidently. So I'm impressed by the sheer scale of the storytelling. I think, like all pieces where I mean, this vision has to have everything kind of operating in the kind of clockwork of storytelling and the clockwork of the technical side of filmmaking. The acting has to go into that tone. The score has to go into that tone. The visual elements have to go into that tone. The tone of the story, the whether it is this detachment or just the epicness of being within a story and having an expectation of self that you cannot fully realize. I think that is Paul's circumstance. That is our lead character's predicament. So I have to give Villeneuve credit. I feel like it is a movie I have to go and see again, because I don't know if I got everything out of it the first time. And I don't know if you largely can, because it's 2.5 hours of a lot of detail, a lot of characters, a lot of considerations for this world and for interpersonal connections that I think, oh my God, excuse me. Oh my God, I think I dropped my phone. which I wasn't even using. So it's like telling me to shut up, Kyle. Let's go move on to the next movie. I want to just clarify. This is a very good movie. It's very well articulated and done, and I do recommend it. I think on just a purely visual sense, and like going back to what the 60s had to offer in kind of epic style filmmaking, there is something to be experienced in this, and we don't get a lot of those these days. So
especially that aren't like, already part of the Marvel
I might
universe.
I might be emotionally unavailable to this movie to a large degree. I wouldn't, and that's me saying I don't think the movie is actually lacking it. I think in my awe, was distracted. And I need to have a different encapsulation, a different approach, and maybe I will find it. I think it's there. I'm just being honest for my first watch. It left me a little distant, and I don't think that is going to be an uncommon experience for some people. I think me explaining that and then having the willingness to do it again, I think speaks volumes to him as a filmmaker, and I think that also is the right approach to something that feels a little alienating.
Maybe we can stand to have a few movies that you can't take down in one chunk.
It's very true,
and certainly we don't get a lot of movies that are made on this scale that are like that. So, I think that's good.
All right. Well, you have nothing else to say on that?
I feel good about it.
You feel good?
I feel like we should talk about our buddy Wes Anderson.
I love Wes Anderson.
Come on the pod, Wes Anderson. Come on the pod. I'll dress up for you. I'll wear a suit for you.
I like the idea of you offering Wes Anderson and
I'm gonna invite everyone.
I'll invite everybody.
All are welcome. All are welcome.
I mean, clearly that one. I shouldn't say never, but I highly doubt it. Let's move on to The French Dispatch. Yes, our latest Wes Anderson film. And I quite enjoyed this one, but let me orient people. Maybe we should get into the practice of saying like what the movie's about. But it is kind of a love letter to the written word, to the journalistic integrity that Wes Anderson loves. I think it is an ode particularly to the New Yorker, is how he has described it. And so what we have is a story. Some characters are fictionalized, but they some of them are based off of real people, or just the idea of real people within the journalistic community. And it really is about Arthur Howitzer, I think is Bill Murray's character's name, and he is the editor-in-chief of the French Dispatch. And the movie is what is it? It's not a eulogy. It's the written kind. It's
obituary.
Obituary. Thank you. Yeah, everyone's gonna be. I can't wait for the comments. That guy doesn't even know what the fuck obituary is.
Hey, listen. You're doing great.
Thank you.
Doing great.
Just
press on.
This is our first time. Like I also get a little wary when I'm getting filmed, even though I know the FBI films me most often.
That's true. It's true.
They got
and this
files.
time you're wearing clothes.
Yeah. There's a substantial difference.
So
I think they're grateful at this point. They're grateful now.
Listen, we'll do the pod with more or less clothes. Sound off.
Whatever your opinion is. I think we will be whores for the.
Should we be wearing?
Yeah, we'll be whores for the poll if you want less clothes or not.
How much clothes?
I think we're willing participants. So, French Dispatch, and so it's an obituary to the editor-in-chief, and goes through select publications to kind of give these vignettes, these particular stories, to go over the different sections and to show you the culture, the arts, the politics, the art world, all of these facets on what is covered in the French Dispatch, this fictionalized publication. And it is a tad different than most Wes Anderson films, I think, structurally. It has the same feeling, has the same color palettes, his inventive French New Wave color palettes and mod fashion designs, that he is such a fussy and familiar filmmaker with all that. He
fussy and familiar.
I mean, that's what he is. I mean, he is a slave to the detail, slave to the to what I would deem the what would be the right word for it? How things are
aesthetic.
Well, I mean, aesthetic describes it, but everything is so.
It's very neat.
It's very neat,
precise.
Yeah, precise. Very good words for it.
So here's a question, Kyle: is this the most Wes Anderson movie Wes Anderson has? Wes Anderson.
Yes, Wes Anderson. It might be.
I think it definitely is.
It might be. It definitely.
I think it definitely is.
And actually, that might actually be a problem with the movie that I have.
Well, I think it's so funny to me, right, to think about him, because more than any other director of our time, you can think of his films as being part of an artistic project, right? His movies are immediately recognizable, more so than any other director by far, probably any director of all time. I mean, I could show you any frame of a Wes Anderson movie, and you will immediately know it's a Wes Anderson movie.
This actually might be very true. I'm trying to think of people with such a substantial degree of artistic pronouncement.
Even the contemporary directors that come as closest to him, people like Tarantino, people like David Lynch, with very distinctive visual styles, nevertheless, do not have the such a specific look.
Yes,
to their movies. Yes, you're right. From the color palette to the way things are framed, the shots are composed in these very specific ways. He loves to center things in the camera, which is very different than what most people do, what you're supposed to do.
There is a level of exaggeration in the way that when you tell a story, he is visualizing the kind of articulations and exaggerations that a storyteller will have. Yes. And so there's a cartoonish element that I love. I mean, what came to mind was Owen Wilson riding the bike, and it's very stagnant, but everything's moving around it. Jeffrey Wright, when he's walking and he's looking at a note, and the feet are moving in a very direct manner, but the hands do not move, which is not at all realistic. It's not at all realistic. But again, his style sort of elevates you out of realism, because it is about storytelling. It is about this feeling about how stories make us feel, the whimsical nature of them.
Absolutely, and it has it also has very specific, like, story, even setting aside the visual stuff, very specific storytelling characteristics. What he does, like this whipsawing from absurdism to real legitimate emotion, right? He loves to do that. Loves to go from something absurdist, right? Most of the movie is pretty absurdist.
Yes.
And then, but the whipsaw to like a very poignant scene. Like, I was thinking about the scene between Bill Murray, the editor, and Jeffrey Wright, right, where Murray comes and bails him out essentially for being arrested essentially for being gay, right? And it's this very sort of poignant,
which is really well done, because it's not really addressed. It's like hinted at.
But it's a very poignant and straight up emotional scene between two great actors, right? I mean, it's two absolute fucking. I mean, this is another movie that is just littered with tremendously talented people, right?
So many.
I mean, which is common for Wes Anderson. He loves these big ensemble casts. Apparently, what the New York Times says, he feeds them all very well, so they all keep on doing movies with him.
I like that.
And but I mean, the movie is just chock-a-block with great fucking actors.
Yes.
Who are generally, I mean, you mentioned our friend Timothy, who's maybe is not the strongest link in this particular movie.
Yeah.
But there certainly are a lot of people putting in very good work.
So let me get into that, because I think as an overall experience, because it's actually, I mean, as compared to Dune, quite short. It's an hour 47.
It's frothy. It's fun.
It's fun, and it moves. I mean, it has that Wes Anderson stylism and energy and pacing. So even though I would say some of the chapters work better than others, I don't think it's as impactful and negatively as, say, what the Coen brothers did and the organization of Ballad of Buster Scruggs and doing those vignettes. I mean, because these are very similar in a structural pattern.
Yeah.
I would say Ballad of Buster Scruggs, all of them are interesting in a large degree, but some are less interesting than others. And so when you morph them and sit and watch the 2 hour plus cut in a theater, which I did, you're like, oh, this one's dragging a little bit. You can feel when something drags or is not working when one chapter is stronger than the other. And so with the French Dispatch, one chapter did not particularly work for me, and that was the Timothée Chalamet chapter. And I think almost in totality, I want to say Frances McDormand helped, and Frances McDormand it was embodying the Wes Anderson dry approach in a large degree. I think my favorite interaction in that entire segment is when Christoph Waltz shows up, and her reaction to him.
Breezes in and breezes out of the movie.
Very casually. Blink, and you'll miss him. But her embodiment of how she reacts to the character before he shows up and how she reacts to the character once he has is very Wes Anderson and tackled that. What I mean, so this is a chapter, and it's about it's more of on the political front. And even though Wes Anderson, I wouldn't say Wes Anderson is a political filmmaker. The mere it's because of that doesn't necessarily matter. It's just a facade of a story.
That's it's totally aesthetic.
Yeah, it's aesthetic.
I don't think there's any like point.
Well,
to
no,
it.
and on that,
I'd say this movie is much. Like, Dune is a much more political movie than any aspect of the French Dispatch.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, because, I mean, the kids, right, there's these kids in rebellion sort of led by the Timothée Chalamet character. But even the joke, what is their slogan? The kids are grumpy.
The kids are grumpy.
The kids
so funny.
It's all about boys being able to go into the girls' dormitory, right?
Yeah.
So it actually was a kind of honest... I think it's pretty close to a lot of what youth rebellion actually is, right? Which is
probably true.
Both understandable on a certain level, but also kind of silly and overwrought, right? Mm-hmm. Which is sort of what he indicates or gestures at it being, right?
Yeah. Well, and so let me get into that. What doesn't work for me, and I think this is where you said, is it the most Wes Anderson that Wes Anderson has done? This chapter definitely is really putting out, it goes beyond homage to like Les Chinois and Masculine Feminine from Jean-Luc Godard. I mean, it is very much borrowing from that, from both of them. The energies, the plot line, the how it's setting up, and he Wes Anderson's it in the kind of the way that he articulates it and the way he mocks it to a large degree, the very notion that he is mocking the political sentiments. I mean, Godard was a mocking kind of filmmaker as well, to a large degree. But with this chapter, Chalamet, to me, was not matching the energy and rhythms that are essentially essential to how Wes Anderson does his films. And so there was an energy that was off to me, and he wasn't as dry as I wanted it. He was a little more expressive, and I wanted it, maybe I just yearned for it to be as part of the machine, and maybe that's me being unfair that he was trying something different. I mean, this part was written specifically for him. Maybe that's how Wes Anderson imagined it to be, to feel a little different than part of the other chapters and works. But for me, it was just a bit... the energy was off. And
maybe he was supposed to be like the only person who doesn't know they're in a Wes Anderson movie.
Maybe that's the intent.
He's not sure where he is or why he's there.
No, and so the rhythm of it got weird for me, and because it's supplanted right there in the middle. It's story 2 between 1 and 3, and you have the opening sort of introduction to our editor-in-chief. You have the bike journalist with Owen Wilson, which I love that sequence. I think it was very quick. And I almost
delightful aperitif.
Yeah, aperitif. I almost wish some of the chapters were as direct and as like the Chalamet chapter. I think if you shortened it, I don't think it would have been as as a negative in my takeaway from the experience in the fullness of the film.
Yeah. Well, it's. I mean, they choose to do sort of a 3-act structure with kind of a prologue and an epilogue,
Yeah.
right? So the prologue is Owen Wilson being funny. Then you get the 3 kind of feature stories, right, which are driven by, the first one is the sort of Benicio del Toro as a prison artist story.
Which is the best. That is the best
I think that is
story.
the best one. I see, for me, it's interesting, right? Because I had the same experience, which is that the middle part fell the flattest for me. I'm not sure why. I don't know if it's on Timothy. To me, the whole thing about the kids are all right, but they're also kind of silly. To me, that's kind of trite.
Yeah.
In a way that I don't think any other aspect of the movie is trite in quite that way.
Yeah.
I mean, Anderson is an interesting filmmaker, right? Because his preoccupations are so clearly aesthetic, right? Which is kind of what makes him interesting to watch. But, I mean, if you were to ask me what are his movies about, I mean, they're thematically meant to be, I think, pretty thin, and I don't even mean that as a criticism.
No.
They're just meant to be kind of archetypal, right? I mean, you think about the Tenenbaums, Royal Tenenbaums. Okay, that's a movie about family. Rushmore is a movie about kind of youth and old
coming
age.
Of age,
coming of age, right? But, I mean, these characters are meant to be kind of archetypal, right? Because they're so stylized and so aestheticized that it's not... I mean, you're not going to mistake this for like a character piece, right?
No.
And that's not what it's trying to be. And so it's not really a criticism, right? Nobody can be all things to all people. And if there's one thing you could credit Anderson with, whatever you think about him, he's clearly being himself, right? He clearly he's making the movies he wants to make. These movies are very specific to him. But so here's what the question I have for you. I left this movie feeling like this was not just about magazine journalism. It was about his own work and about how he's kind of ready to move on from being the Wes Anderson that we know.
Oh.
So I haven't read anything about this movie. I don't know if anybody's asked him this question, but I mean...
You think he's going to change direction?
I mean, at the very end of it, Bill Murray says, so what's next? So what's next? And that's kind of the end of it. To me, this movie represents as far as you can take the Wes Anderson project.
Yeah.
This represents to me a real terminal point of his project. The level, I mean, the way he does those insane kind of living tableaus all throughout the movie, the kind of nonstop, like, visual kind of bric-a-brac just going on everywhere. And the topics that he takes on, right? I mean, people are getting murdered. People are having sex. People are getting kidnapped. I mean, he just makes it all into the same sort of Wes Anderson kind of playful, sort of fun, beautiful, tragicomic kind of joke. I just don't... I sense that this movie had the feel to me of... Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, of an Irishman, of a director sort of looking back at their work and kind of really sort of, or even maybe the better Scorsese example would be Departed. Like, Departed to me is the terminal point of how you can take a movie like a Goodfellas, right? Just where everyone's bad, everyone's a rat, everyone's terrible to each other. It is like Scorsese saying, I'm going to go as far with my thing as I can. Yeah. And just see, like, I don't know how much more Wes Anderson can be. And I feel like he knows that. And I feel like the whole idea of having it be around an obituary of a creator.
Yeah.
Right? I felt like in some ways he was writing the obituary to the sort of first long chapter of his work. Right?
That is a question that's like, in what I do in my podcast is that, you take a 10-year gap and then you look back at these works and then you see what they did do after.
I really am interested to see if the next movie he makes is something that is not recognizably
him. I'm
really interested to see what the next thing is, because this movie felt to me quite self-consciously like a sort of a little wink to say, like, okay, I've done it. I did it. This is it.
And you could say his last 3 movies were kind of a build up to it anyway. Grand Budapest to Isle of Dogs to French Dispatch. There is something of an excess to the Wes Anderson the notion and style that he is almost not just duplicating, but almost just enlarging each chapter, each film that he does. He has expanded its scope, expanded its vision, and you can say that perhaps in this movie, because it dabbles in callbacks to his work. I mean, the airplane is kind of a callback to the boat. The airplane sequence where it's animated, but then you go have these real rooms and interactions within it. It's very much like the boat in Life Aquatic. You have an animated sequence that they make a comment that it was done in kind of cheap form, and so it feels that way, which is a wonder. It has such a wonderful cap-end joke on the animation sequence that's very, very well done. And so perhaps it is kind of this embodiment of what he has done in the past, stylistically, character-wise, latching on to a subject matter that he holds dear, and that perhaps he does want to leave this all behind for something else, or explore it a different way, or a different aesthetic choice and influence that he has, that he's been yearning to do, but there's almost an expectation of him at this point.
Yeah, I mean, it felt to me very much like someone who was kind of looking
I should
back.
apologize, to anybody who's going to be watching this video.
I was going to say, it looks a little...
It's gotten darker.
This is so not Wes Anderson.
Wes. It's perpetually getting darker, and it's funny because we used to have a light in this. Yeah, we used to. And it's gone now. I wonder if I can... here, hold on.
That's good. Maybe nobody...
We're not editing anything.
Maybe they didn't see me just pick my nose. Right?
Maybe not. But let's see if I can get just light from the TV or something. This is I don't even know if that's gonna do it.
This is great. I love it. Now if people can see the reflection. Let's put something terrible on the screen.
Yeah, I was watching this terrible show. I don't know if you've seen it, called You.
I saw Netflix,
dreadful.
Netflix was trying to get me to watch it, but I resisted the power.
I just started to put things on because.
There we go. Let's get the.
Hey, this is better.
Let's get
you can see
the purple. I love it. I love it.
I'll try and keep that.
Well,
going.
I feel like we're closing in. We're closing in.
You think so? Okay. Well, let me. What were we talking about?
We were talking about whether this is the last Wes Anderson movie.
I would.
I'm not saying this is not like a lead pipe lock guarantee here. I'm just saying that when Bill Murray says what's next, and there's
implication.
It's I looked at this movie and I felt like Wes Anderson was saying, this is it. This is the full trick bag. This is everything I got. Right. I got the animation. I got the insane kind of like the bit with the writing on the wall with the bribes. Right. I mean, he got every actor that loves to work with him to do all kinds of goofy
except
shit.
for Jeff Goldblum. I was a little it was a little unfortunate.
Maybe a Goldblum will be in his next.
Yeah, his next one. It is filled with all of these people who keep coming back. I am always impressed with how they aid and enhance the material and style, whether it is Adrian Brody, who I thought this is the largest role he's gotten. I think other than Darjeeling Limited, I think this is the largest role he's had in a Wes Anderson film. It sort of on the same level and side character feature, but he is the lead in a chapter versus a side villain in Grand Budapest. I thought Adrian Brody was fantastic. I thought that chapter with Léa Seydoux, Benicio del Toro, you have Bob Balaban show back up again, Henry Winkler, who I've never seen,
Henry Winkler
and
just popping in.
It was. I thought. And this is probably to the experience that there's a negative to it, is that chapter, that opening story, is the best of the three. And the middle one sinks just a bit. It's not unenjoyable, but it sinks. And then the last one feels excessive to a degree. But I think it's saved by the fact that Jeffrey Wright is anchoring it. He is so fantastic in this.
Yeah, one. and I mean, it's just amazing to me. It seems like these movies could go really wrong. They could be kind of insufferable. They could be kind of hard to watch. They could be kind of twee, and maybe they are a little twee. right? But they just, I don't know, it just works.
Yeah.
Somehow it just works. And yes, the fact that Jeffrey Wright can sort of take this. It's so funny. I feel like I've seen the last 3 movies I've seen are this two and the Bond movie. So I've seen Jeffrey Wright twice. I've seen Léa Seydoux twice. I've seen Timothée Chalamet twice. I guess we know who's good, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We know who's good. I mean, I'm in love with Léa Seydoux.
Oh my goodness! I mean, she is stunning and stunning as a Bond girl. I mean, in this movie, the fact that she reveals so much of her is just a.
I mean, I guess once you've done Blue is the Warmest
that's
Color,
true.
right?
It's true. Once you've done Blue is the Warmest Color, it doesn't matter.
There's nothing that can make you do sort of like actual hardcore pornography.
Yeah, yeah.
Blue is the Warmest Color more becomes.
Yeah, there have been
as pornographic as.
Yeah, what is his name? Abdelatif?
Yes, I know the director of Blue is the Warmest Color.
Yeah,
his name I will not attempt.
Yeah, I'm not.
Who apparently is kind of a crazy
awful.
person.
Yeah, apparently not very pleasant.
Kind of a hard person to work with.
You're right, and this gives it the kind of it's. I like how it's played in tastefulness in this movie. The nudity. It's very tasteful and done so in kind of a little bit of a joke. It's fun to have the transition of her as a nude model for this imprisoned artist, and then the next shot you have of her is in uniform. Like it has. This is a Wes Anderson punch of a kind of joke that I like that he's able to do.
Yes. I mean that sort of a visual joke is kind of right in his wheelhouse. As is, like I said, the kind of total absurdism, kind of just ridiculousness, right? Visual or sort of. I laughed. You talked about the Owen Wilson thing. That was a good. That little bit at the beginning is great. One of my favorite lines of the movie was where they were in some sort of old neighborhood. It's like, this is the kind of neighborhood where old people go who failed.
And they're struggling to get on the bus.
That was pretty early, and I was like, okay, that's good. That's a good line.
There's some very, very funny lines. This is a very funny movie. I guess, yeah. That's the thing is, if it's this ode to the written word, I think to a large degree it succeeds. You know, I mean, there is something lost in that the visual medium has sort of taken over, not only the stories about news, the world, but also just it has replaced our appreciation for for journalistic entities, and I feel like a lot of these quirky, sometimes grounded, but also you see that in this movie, these stories are a bit wild and eccentric, and the characters that the movie luckily these kind of characters get to be in a film and the articulation of those stories of the written word, but I feel like there's so much going on in the world, so much human interest, so much culture, so much personability that the written word captures, because it's almost required upon them to venture the world in such a openness and such a get a swath of different experiences, and that film is a very specific medium that has to drill in on a very particular story here and there. So I guess I think it succeeds to a large degree into the idea that we need to appreciate a lot of what is essentially a dying medium for venturing story, venturing human beings. And I think if it works in that way, I think it's a success. The element that you're bringing up about whether it is sort of a self-reflection on style, storytelling, and what he has had to offer, and essentially distills these disparate chapters that are kind of the connective tissue of a journalistic piece and the final journalistic entity of the French Dispatch. You're right. There's something of an end to this. There's something of an end to his career. There's something of an end to this this particular chapter and the kind of stories he's telling. I think that's a wonderful thought to have in carrying on and to see what he does next. Because
and maybe I certainly don't think this is his last movie.
No, not at all.
I don't know if he'll try to make a non-Wes Anderson movie or not. I suspect he might. There certainly was an aspect of just reflecting, kind of looking back at the work he's done, looking back at the way he works, and the specific kind of movies that he makes. But yeah, I think that he clearly has, I mean, one thing that sort of redeems his movies, right, for me, whether or not I particularly like this one or that one, I liked this one, is that he's a very warm, sort of generous film.
That is true.
Right? He has, there's a real warmth and kind of kindness to his movies that you don't always see. Right? He clearly feels a certain warmth for, yes, the kind of, it's a specific kind of journalism, right? It's kind of long-form magazine journalism.
Yeah.
That's what he's talking about. Obviously, we have tons of journalism on some level.
Yeah.
People commenting on the news or whatever. But we don't have this kind of long-form feature writing. It's expensive. It's hard to do. You don't know if it's going to work, right? And so it has a kind of... and it has a kind of human interest where you can see the parallel, right, to what Anderson does. Anderson is a curious filmmaker, right? He's curious about people, right? And he thinks that you can tell interesting stories about people by being a storyteller, as you say.
Yeah.
He's not trying to render them realistically. He's not trying to render them, in some sort of cinema verite kind of way. It's very stylized. But so too is writing a long article about someone. I mean,
absolutely.
What's more abstract than words on a page, right?
Yeah.
That's all for you to fill in, right? So he does have a kind of interest in storytelling, visual storytelling, but a real human interest, right? That is shot through his thing. I mean, in some sense, you could think of him as like a sympathetic but curious writer of profiles about his characters. Like Royal Tenenbaum's Rushmore, Moonrise Kingdom. You could conceive of all of these, I think, as like, this is someone who is really interested in these people and wanted to tell a kind of interesting, compelling story about them because he thought they were interesting. And that, in some sense, is magazine profile feature writing journalism. Is you find something that you think, man, we should really take a close look at this. Like, we could really spend 10,000, 15,000 words sort of chewing on this person or this event or this series of events. So I can see, I would never thought that before this movie, but now that I sort of turn it around in my head, it does make sense to me. I can see the influence, right, of that style, which is a dying breed of journalism, of that particular style of journalism, which did, peak with the New Yorker and peak with the kind of, and still gets written in the New Yorker too. To its credit. Those long pieces that really kind of take you into a world, right? Take you into a world. And, I mean, it makes sense. It makes sense.
Yeah, you can tell that he is paying ode to what is essentially the influence on a career of storytelling, a career of focus, a career of, when you said the word tableau, it really is like painting a general picture of a particular place, time, space, and it invites you into that in such a worldliness, and I like the word you used, warmth. His warmness is I think a defining feature from Bottle Rocket to French Dispatch. All of his portraits, all of his stories have such a intrinsic warmness to the characters and the story being told, and that's why the whimsical stylizations work so well. The exaggerated colors, the use of costuming, the space use, how he articulates places and things, whether it is a house in Moonrise Kingdom, and it you see all the working pieces and rooms, whether it is in this one, what a wonderful the waiter going up into to deliver the drinks to the staff, and the process that it was, and that you have these whimsical cheats of comedy and visual style. It's those kinds of things that articulate the warmness for the place and the stories he's telling that are so inviting. It's such an inviting way to bring you into a different world, one that might be somewhat familiar, but one that was also striking in its originality. And so I think, for me, Wes Anderson is such a valuable contribution to
Yes.
cinema.
Well, it goes back to one of the themes that I always touch on with you is sort of curiosity and the redemptive power of curiosity and the affection of curiosity, right? That it's like he loves these people, but he's very curious about them.
Yes, yeah.
He finds them to be interesting, right? And it's a high compliment, right? But it's also from the standpoint of writing fiction, right? Making things up. It's a nice change of pace, right? It's a nice kind of, you never sense that these people are being judged, right? Or that they're being put forward as kind of a proxy for something that we're supposed to judge, right? It's very much, he tries to sort of paint these, in the midst of all this absurdism and whimsy and goofiness, the people feel fully formed and they feel, they inspire a certain sympathy and empathy because of his curiosity, because we're watching as he watches and we feel sort of drawn in. That's kind of part of the mystery of great filmmaking or great feature writing, right? Is this whole thing of, God, if you just really look at this thing close enough, it's going to be interesting, right? If you really invest yourself in being very curious about a person or an event or if you really just look at it really closely and just kind of chew on it, there's something there. There's something really interesting and compelling there. And I think that that's a very charitable attitude towards humanity, right? And I think I think it's uncommon. I think it's pretty uncommon.
It really is. I mean, we get a lot of interpretations, but to be curious and inquisitive and welcoming to the human existence and the human story in whatever forms it takes, that kind of warmness, that kind of hope that you put into kind of the best of us, those are the kind of stories that, really resonate with people. They really do. I know I'm a cynic at heart to a large degree, and I really do value a really dour ending. But I have to say that I'm a cynical romantic, and the romantic in me just I adore movies like this. Like they hone in on my heart, and I love it.
Yeah, your heart grew 3 sizes that day.
It does. Every time I watch a Wes Anderson film, I leave beaming to a large degree. I laughed, I enjoyed, and so French Dispatch. It's like, what is a conversation about ranking? It's like I don't think it necessarily matters because they're all different experiences to a large degree with different intents, but obviously they have the same sort of appreciation and love and style and homage and filmic influence that he brings to the table, and you just have to value it and appreciate it when it comes your way to a large degree. So any other thoughts on French Dispatch?
I feel good. I feel like we.
Anything on Dune we didn't... let's go back.
Other movies you want to talk about?
But, so I'm going to work to put this out rather quickly. I don't think I'm going to do much editing. Obviously, in that I apologize for the camera setup was actually a surprise to Ben. It was a surprise to me that
that's why I look sexy all the same.
Yeah, and so I apologize that it's gonna it's gonna get darker.
I think this is the real shit.
This is real.
We're ultimately Lars von Trier at heart. We're just gonna shoot.
This is the Dogma 95. I don't know if I announced the title.
Light.
Yeah, I don't know if I announced it. We talked title before this started, but even though I know there's an NPR show called Up-to-Date, and it's probably gonna do damage to our Google searches, but Up-to-Date Cinephile I thought was a rather apropos name because we're gonna try and do this weekly and catch up on movies every week and talk them out, and we are going to try and do a larger film, unless we find it to be just not worth it. I think independent cinema is. I think Ben and I value that a lot more.
We're gonna pick some winners for you, or at least some movies that are in the zeitgeist.
In the zeitgeist conversation. I mean, I saw 5 movies in the theater this week.
What the fuck?
5 movies.
You're crazy,
I saw Lamb. I saw Dune. I saw Bergman Island. then French Dispatch, and today I saw Mass. And so I've gotten
nuts.
Yeah, I've gotten a lot of experiences.
I felt good about 2. The
lights go out. Man, it's like, why don't you stop already?
Time's up,
Anyways,
motherfuckers.
Ben, thanks for giving us this idea. I really do value talking with you, and
Likewise.
I like talking movies with you. I like talking, anything with you, really. And so I thought this was a nice little excuse, and hopefully people enjoy listening to us gab on in our our opinions about movies. We're going to try and give you some, some good ideas as to what you should see, whether something's worth it. But I think we're also going to give you a good idea as to why something's worthwhile, and give our kind of real opinion on it. And so I appreciate this as an exercise, and hopefully we can keep this going.
Right on.
We'll catch up next week.
Absolutely.
Have a good one.